be careful what I say here. The data you get on retention, as far as I'm concerned, isn't accurate.
All right. Ed, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So this is actually one of the episodes that I'm really, really excited about. I know I say that all the time, but I actually watch your stuff. Like every single video that comes out.
You're not lying this time.
Exactly. I'm actually being 100% sincere here, which of course we always are. But I watch every single one of your videos and I send it to my team almost every single time. So I'm super excited for this. First, I would love for you to go into your YouTube journey, because maybe for people watching this or listening, they haven't watched all your stuff like I have, so that they may not know how you got to this space.
Yeah, sure. So I had a production company in the UK. We used to make like corporate videos for people. And I thought, I like YouTube, let's just turn it into a marketing for the business, with the idea being it was going to take years, but we were going to try and grow to 500,000 followers over 10 years. And I'd planned it all out, 6% a month for 10 years would have got me there. And so just started making 3 videos a week talking about YouTube, but mainly as well marketing, using video to market, heavily biased towards YouTube. So I did that for 2 years, never missed an upload, 3 videos a week. And then I was like, oh, we got 8,000 subscribers, I'm ahead of my target. And I thought, this is stupid. Why am I getting 90 views on a video when I release one, but I've got 8,000 subscribers? Why am I waiting things to rank in search? This doesn't make any sense. There's no community there. I'm just always chasing new viewers and they never come back. So I thought, okay, need to do something about this. Started researching, made a lot of changes, started putting way more effort into my content, cut it down to 1 a week, which eventually ended up as 2 a week. And yeah, it completely transformed the channel to the point where I then left the production company because I just wasn't feeling it. Was making content specifically to help creators. So I gave my business partner my half, took the channel. And that was in October, so it was only about 6 months ago.
Wow.
The channel was growing it's grown on about, I think this time last year I had 8,000 subscribers. And I got 130 something. So
dang.
Yeah, if I'm honest, it's not really a metric I track.
Yes.
Subscribers. It's nice to see how many people you've convinced to push a button. But for me, it's more about active viewers and a community. And that's kind of my focus now. So that's been my journey. It went from pumping out loads of stuff, which worked fine, it just took too long, to putting more and more effort in, to the point where now I'm just like, how do I keep pushing this further and further?
That is amazing.
So it has different challenges now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew you had grown very quickly, but I didn't realize it was that to that, because that is amazing. And you perfectly segued into my next question. Is the biggest thing that I notice when I watch your stuff is, for a YouTube specific edutainer, you're talking about things that very few YouTube experts talk about like at all. And that is almost the core focus of your approach, which is like the people side of the numbers. You spoke to that aha moment. Can you like walk us through how you got there and what that really means for YouTube?
Well, the aha moment where I suddenly realized this was a bad way of doing it.
Exactly.
I think it was just the amount I was getting trolled, which is funny because I hated it now. But now I'm like, thanks. That was really helpful trolls. Because it made me realize that maybe this wasn't going as well as I thought, and I should push myself more. It was just, I kept seeing like just regular channels, like fun ones, not entertainment ones, education ones, grow really quick. And I was like, well, they're not targeting search. What are they doing? And then I was like, hang on, this is just a game of interest. All they're doing is making interesting stuff and wrapping it up in an interesting way. And how-to videos are not interesting when they get shown on the homepage. They're interesting when you look for them specifically. And then I looked at my data and I was like, my click-through rates for my videos are discovered in search are very high, which means they're performing, but very low when they're put on the homepage. And I was like, they don't work, they're the opposite. How-to is like, this is the problem I have right now. The homepage is where people come to YouTube to be entertained, really, and it's a game of trying to steal their attention the second they see it. And on the homepage, you're competing against every other creator they're watching. So I was like, well, I need to make more interesting stuff or wrap up what I'm making in a more interesting way. So yeah, that was kind of like the realization. Then trying to understand how to do that was tough.
Yes, no, that's hard.
That is the bit everyone struggles with, and I still struggle with now. But yeah, no, I taught, so Daryl Eves taught me his system. So Daryl kind of teaches getting suggested rather than search.
Yeah.
He just doesn't make much YouTube videos anymore. So he teaches a lot of people. So I went on his program, and about 2 months after it, everything just went and clicked. And I was like, oh, okay, this is starting to feel easier. But for 2 or 3 months, when I was putting tons of effort into content and still not getting much traction, I was getting messages from people being like, just quit, stop putting all this effort in, it's stupid, you're wasting your time. And I was like, no.
No.
And then one video just popped and the whole channel went with it.
Yeah.
And when you get data, everything gets a little bit easier, so long as you can determine it correctly. And that was the shift, really.
Wow. That is awesome. And you threw a bunch of nuggets in there that I want to unpack. I think the first one was how you had that shift away from prioritizing search. I think so many channels are stuck on that. And I know I can even say for my own channel, like I've been pretty stuck on that, and it definitely has a very low ceiling. So for edutainers, which like we both are, how do you make videos that are also entertaining that will actually not only get clicks in browsing suggested, but keep people watching? Because that's something that I've struggled with tremendously.
So look, be careful what I say here. There's a myth about retention
Okay.
that no one ever talks about. And I'm careful with what I say in them because I don't want to be a backlash. The data you get on retention, as far as I'm concerned, isn't accurate, and it doesn't tell the whole picture. So when an entertainment channel makes a video called "I played a piano under the ocean," you look at that and you're like, that sounds interesting, I'm going to watch it. For educational channels, you are searching for something. Something in your mind that you kind of want to hear. So it's like, if I make a video called "the #1 thing that holds every YouTube channel back," they want to skip to get to that point, and it's very, very hard to stop them. And what happens with most educational channels is there's a massive drop. No matter what they do, it's like they've not even been given a chance to talk. So you get this drop off. Now what I see on entertainment channels is people don't skip like that as much. So there are educational channels who I've seen eliminate the drop, but if I'm honest, I've probably seen it about 2 or 3 times, and the content they've made has been very challenge based. So it's education wrapped up inside entertainment. So the first thing that a lot of YouTubers obsess over is their attention, which is right. We do always want to keep growing, but also I don't feel like we do play by the same rules as the entertainment only ones, because people sit down and go, entertain me. Not give me the thing, give me that one bit of information you promised in the title. Okay. Or when it comes to education, think about this, like how can you possibly know what someone knows? So I have another channel which is targeting completely for beginners, way easier to hold their attention because the people that watch it don't know anything. Everything is new, every step of the way. The second I tell you something you already know, you're like, yeah, I kind of know that. So we can wrap it up in stories and we can do our best to always increase that retention, and that is the goal. But I do find a lot of the channels that I work with, they just need to get their click-through rates up more than their attention, because they're making quality stuff. And I'm like, look, if you can get this to 70% of retention, great, but you've got a 4% click-through rate, and right now that needs to be an 8. So that's often where I get people to focus first, is trying to improve that so that they can then put the effort into their retention, because both of them are different beasts. And with retention as well, like the more impressions you get, that tends to drop as YouTube your click-through rate, and your retention drops because YouTube's showing more and more people. So people are like, oh, my retention's only 40%. And I'll look and be like, yeah, but that video got you 5 million impressions. YouTube pushed it more than the others. So they're kind of measuring the wrong metrics as well. So it's never as black and white with retention. And actually, my worst retention video has done the best. It didn't do very well compared to the previous videos, but it did something right because YouTube kept pushing it, and then it got more and more impressions and the retention dropped even more. And you'd look at it now and I'd say this video has a click-through rate of 2% and the retention of 35, but it's got 1.5 million views. Wow. So, when you talk about these metrics, it's not a case of good retention and click-through rate is the be all and end all. You want to be looking at impressions and what you had to do to get those impressions. that make sense?
Yeah, no, that actually makes a ton of sense. And I have a few questions about that. So the first one is, for that video that really popped, is there anything that you could point to as to why you think that happened?
Yeah, it was just the topic was about making money. So it just, money-based content almost just seems to do better.
Yes, always.
More interesting click-through rate. It was a story that got shared all over the place. Its retention would have been good in terms of good enough to get the impressions it got. And I did something people hadn't seen before. So it was, when I look at the data, I don't tend to look at that as like, oh, as long as if I get those exact metrics again, my video will fly. I've destroyed the metrics of that video since, not had the same result. So there's a lot going on that's kind of like in the background of YouTube to work out what it is that gets pushed. But really, it was just a story that was interesting. And I remember when I released it being like, oh man, this did rubbish. Like, I can't believe I thought this was going to do so well. I've never seen anyone do this before. And then 2 weeks later, picking up 2,000 subscribers a day.
Dang.
So there's so much going on with YouTube, and that's what makes it so hard. It's like, it's impossible really for people to know exactly what metric they need. The best thing we can do is try and keep improving on the basics. But impressions is something that people don't focus on enough. And actually, I get a lot of comments, people going, oh, my best performing video's got the worst click-through rate. Why can't my other videos beat it? And I'm like, that's because it's getting all the impressions. That's what happens. Yeah,
of course. And to get the impressions, having a high click-through rate early is always very, very important. And you mentioned that that's universally important. So what are the tips that you typically give to people when they're really focusing on improving that metric?
So improving click-through rate, the first thing I do is just get them to look at their channel to establish what's actually good or bad for their channel in terms of click-through rate. Most people have no idea if I say what's a good click-through rate. They also look at the average click-through rate rather than individual traffic sources. So YouTube measures your content based on where it's discovered. So if you have a click-through rate of 2%, which it shows you in the analytics, that might be a mixture of 14 different traffic sources. And you might find your search click-through rate is 20%, but your homepage click-through rate is 0.1%. So I usually just say, like, establish where you want your video to perform first, then work out what a good click-through rate is for you, and then always just try and beat it by 0.1. We're not trying to jump up a ton. So that's one of the first things, really. It's trying to understand what's good for your channel, because what's good for your channel and what's good for mine are completely different things. And actually, you just got to beat your own best. And again, what you'll find is, I seem to see like leg ups. So at the moment, I'm getting penalized. And again, this is another theory that I don't want to go too deep into.
Please do.
I'm not sure there's much I can do to get, as we speak, I had the best data on a video I think I've ever made, and YouTube wouldn't give me the impressions. And there's a few reasons why, which are not necessarily, I don't feel, under my control, but it is starting to shift. So it's understanding what is a good amount of impressions for your content, as well as a click-through rate and your retention. Because sometimes I feel like no matter what we do, and YouTube gives you some little signs that backs this up in its data, sometimes it feels like things are a little out of our control in terms of like how a niche performs, not just an individual video.
Okay. And can you speak?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. But for anybody watching this, can you speak as to what you mean by what are those indicators that you feel are beyond your control?
I can't, because I haven't got the proof yet, and I'm trying to work out how to devise the proof that confirms what I think. But I'm currently talking to 20 different YouTubers who are having the same problem, and we're measuring some data to see if I predict the problem is going to shift in the next 2 weeks. And if it's right, then I can talk about it. But at the moment, it would also be detrimental to YouTube to promote that it worked in this way, because it would encourage creators to stop making videos at certain points in time. Yeah, so I don't know. It could be a load of rubbish. It could be something where I'm like, okay, this is kind of a big deal. But if I find out, I'll let people know.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so and will that be the topic of a future video then, if it comes to be?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
I still don't know if I'll ever talk about it publicly, that one.
Okay. Okay. Well, I like that. I hope to find out, because I have seen things like that too, where it seems like things are beyond your control and you can do everything within your power the right way, and it still seems like there's a force that's keeping you boxed in. But I hope that comes out in the video.
What I would say is, if you keep doing the right things, like I'm chatting to a creator at the moment who is putting more effort into their content, and he's like, I'm just not getting the clicks. I'm getting the better comments than usual. These videos just aren't getting pushed as well as my old stuff. And I'm just saying, let's stick with it, because quality will prevail in the end. And once you have that one video that brings in a new audience and they discover a ton of quality, that's when things are going to really rocket. If you discover one quality video and they don't come and binge all your content, then, you know, it's not as good as having waited but continuing to put the effort into the quality. So I think, you know, if you're frustrated and you're like, oh, my videos are really good, and they actually are, it's just a matter of time. You've just got to figure out how to package that content to make sure that people click on it. And then when YouTube does push it, hopefully things will move very fast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think content packaging is one of the most under-stressed skill and importance, and even more so on YouTube. It's such a huge part of the game, with click-through rates and effective titles and all that stuff being massively important. And it seems like a lot of people go after search because they're told to as a new channel, and also because it's very predictable is probably the word that I would attach to it, once you get that down. So you've obviously completely shifted away, and I think there's a number that you said that 70% of views come from browse and suggested. Is that the right number?
Yeah, I think 70% is YouTube recommending your content.
Okay, and then so that would leave less 30 or less for search. So you're obviously, just by doing that, you're in a way smaller potential pool. Do you think for new channels they should still prioritize search, or is that a waste of their time?
No, they should. It's a tough one. See, it's very rare for a channel to just put a video on YouTube and it get views from anywhere other than search, because what YouTube needs is an audience to test your content with. So I break YouTube up into two sections. You have your audience, these are people who have watched your videos, and then your community, and these are people who keep coming back. And at the start, you have neither. So you need to build an audience before you can build a community. Now the homepage, when you make a video, that's where it gets tested like instantly. And that's what brings the community back and views in fast. But until you've got people to show your new videos to, you can't really use it effectively, because YouTube just doesn't tend to give a blank video with no, you know, audience at all impressions. Now I've seen a couple of channels blow up with their first ever video, but they found the way to funnel traffic in so that YouTube can then sort of, you know, test it, because YouTube doesn't want to just blast out any old thing at everyone. So search is right for most people for a few reasons. Firstly, you don't have to think in a really long-winded and painful way of how do I make my content interesting. You just go, what do people search for? And then you title your video that question, and then you make a thumbnail that's generally simple and that kind of backs up the thing they're looking for, and then you put the video out, and then you wait potentially a year for it to rank sometimes. But what it does is it gives you the skills, and the idea is eventually you rank, and it starts to bring people back to your channel where they discover more content that's of interest to them. And what I did when I started another channel, just to sort of, I was like, when do you switch from search to browse? I just waited until my data told me that I had 1,000 unique viewers in a month. And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna make videos for that audience now and the problems they have, and stop making search terms in the hope that YouTube shows those 1,000 people some more of my videos and the kind of more interesting topic. When they see it on the homepage, they go, that's interesting, click on it and come back. So it's not a magic number, it's just what I tested, and it seemed to work. So you really need some sort of audience there in your data before you make a switch. And then you don't have to jump, and you can go between different types of content. But the problem with search is it's always new. It's like, make something to find new people, not how do I bring the community back? And for me, that's what YouTube's about, building a community. So step one, use search for sure. But once you've started to get some traction, test this sort of more human interest-based content that isn't saying exactly what a video is about, because people don't tend to click on that because it's not that interesting compared to like Mr. Beast doing something amazing on the homepage. And then you got to sort of keep pushing yourself, because the homepage is kind of where the best creators in the world hang out.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
whoever's watching your video, no matter, they're going to watch tons of other creators. So when YouTube puts your video on the homepage next to these best creators in the world, you've got to get a click against people who have teams of 100 people working on their channel. So it's not a level playing field. And that means you really have to understand your audience and understand what it is they care about, and then how to package your content. And that takes practice. And actually, it's nearly the exact opposite of search. Search is just write what this is about. The homepage is kind of about, how do I make someone interested in this thing I want to talk about? Because it's not that interesting when it's black and white. And they're the opposite thought processes, and that's where people struggle, because they spent ages learning how to drive, and then I say, oh, by the way, I'm going to take your steering wheel off now and replace it with a banana. And they've got to relearn again. So it's a tough one.
I love that expression, because that's the exact same situation I'm at right now. I built my whole channel off the back of search, and I agree with you completely. I think it's a great foundation building. But it does create habits. And I think that's the state that I'm in, is that's always where my mind goes. So is there any tips for someone like me who's just like stuck in that search mindset? Like, how do I develop the other skills that you're talking about that allow you to perform in the areas where YouTube's actually promoting content?
The first thing is to say, right, what do I want to make my video on? So give me an example of a video that you might want to make.
Why no one cares about your content.
Okay, so that would kind of work on the homepage, so long as the thumbnail set up the context as to like who this is for, and created some more intrigue. I think, and this is tough, and most people don't like doing this. The first thing is to accept that your idea is boring and it's very unclickable. And that's the first thing I do every time. I'm like, what do I want to talk about? Okay, I want to talk about presenting. Well, that's boring. I know from my data over the years, nobody clicks on that. They will in search, but everyone thinks they're okay. It's not a burning issue. How on earth do I wrap this up in a way so that they click on some content, then get value from it and go, you just made me watch a video about presenting. I learned a ton. I'm now getting better results on my YouTube channel, without telling them it's a video about presenting, because they'll never click on it. And then it's like, how do I make that interesting? If I just sit there and go, right, do this, be more energetic. It's just a list. So then I have to find a device to carry my message to make it more interesting. So the title is boring, the content is boring. It's not a burning problem for anyone, but the result it brings, now that's interesting. And the way it makes them feel, that's interesting. So that's my problem. I've got to solve that and go, I've got to make this boring topic interesting. So I'll look for a story and I'll be like, okay, who else out there has had this problem presenting? And then I'll be like, cool, I'll find a YouTuber whose story, is really inspiring. And then I'll talk about how, presenting changed their channel. And then suddenly you've not got a video called Body Language, nothing to do with that. It's the secret hack every big YouTuber's using. And then you just give them the information about that they would never have clicked on or cared about in a way that they find fascinating. That's what makes it tough. So, yes. And for a lot of people, it's too much work. I think I spend 3 weeks, 2 weeks, a month on a video, and a lot of that is just thinking and writing. So the baby step is just to start with your title and thumbnail and to go, my video is boring. Nobody's going to click on it when they see it. Yeah. How do I solve this problem and make it interesting to them? That's the first step you should take before you make a video, and then spend the time on the title and thumbnail. And then if you think you've made that topic interesting from a visual point of view, then you can make the video. But otherwise, I wouldn't bother if you want views on the homepage, because a low click-through rate is going to kind of kill it.
Wow, that's awesome. And you mentioned how much effort goes into each one of your videos, which is evident, I'll say, when you watch one of yours, especially because of the ones that you're typically comparing it to is other educational type stuff. And it's usually just like in one place, very static, very linear. So with your videos, how did you work storytelling so much into education? And then also, this is a personal question, how much planning in terms of like scripting and whatnot goes into each video? Is like every word planned, or how do you put this together?
So what was the first part of that question again, sorry?
How did you make education content act like a story? Because that seems like a very difficult thing for people to do.
First thing is you just have to try, which sounds a bit weird, but a lot of people don't. They're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I try stuff.
Yeah.
Look, my journey was painful, and 90% of it has been a nightmare because like trying to continually push myself, like my girlfriend hates my YouTube channel because she's like, what this does to you is not fair. I'm starting to enjoy it now, but it was always like, look, my next video has to be better than the last. And if I put 100% effort into the last, well, I've got to find another 10% of effort somewhere, which means I'm continually pushing myself thinking, how can I make this more interesting? So I usually go, this is my idea, tell myself it's boring and no one will ever click on it. Tell myself the information is average and boring and no one's going to enjoy watching it. And then go, well, how do I make it interesting?
Yeah.
So humor is a real easy one, metaphor, props, but it's baby steps. So the first thing I did, I was like, I'll just make my intros more fun. Just make them weird and silly. See what reaction we've got. Cool, people enjoyed it. Retention didn't say that. The retention said they crashed. But I thought I'm going to go by the people, not the graph, because I'm getting more comments than I've ever had just from me having more fun in my intros. People are skipping them, but the ones that aren't are loving it. So I'm going to cater to those guys. And then bit by bit, I started to add more to it. But you know, the problem with this is it can go deep. So you can go into like the story arc and storytelling techniques, and they are really hard to get your head around. But also one of the problems is people go towards like, oh, tell a story, but it's like, you can't tell a story. You've got to tell an interesting story, because stories on their own are not interesting or fascinating. So you've got to continually think, well, how do I make everything more interesting? So there's no real like set process that I've been through for making educational content more interesting. You just stick to the basics, and I think humor, metaphors are very simple. And then I'll go, all right, if I'm making a video about mistakes, I could summarize that in 5 bullet points. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. What's the point of the video when you can summarize the whole thing in 5 bullet points and nobody actually needs any more content? Well, it needs to be to entertain them. So it's like, cool, let's just make the video more entertaining and scatter the 5 points in, and people are gonna watch it and enjoy it, and then they're gonna be blind to the fact that I only told them 5 things that I could have summarized in 20 seconds because they enjoyed it. So that's another way of looking at it. It's like, actually, we don't need to go and give crazy detailed information. You'll get a better result on YouTube just by making it more entertaining than you will by packing it out with like crazy depth. In fact, the best information I've ever given has just destroyed my retention. It's just too deep. It's like, it's the stuff I'd have to lock away because people don't want to watch it.
Yes, I love that you said that, because sometimes I'll often say that YouTube is, for success, it's a generalist platform, because if you go too in depth, you naturally lose so many people that you need to make the video a success in terms of metrics. So I love that you said that.
So if you think about what I said about retention earlier, where it's like, how can you know what level of information people have?
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, for general, well, 5 mistakes, the big YouTubers are going to know them all. The little ones find it interesting. The guys in the middle won't find them interesting. So you make them more entertaining and make the whole thing more general, then your retention will go up.
Yeah.
But it does need to be part of a strategy. So if you're a business like I am, you know, it's the end of the day, if you want to make sales and build a business, well, retention doesn't matter. Click-through rate doesn't matter. It's kind of about the bottom line, right? And sometimes you have to think, well, maybe I'll make a video intentionally that is for a type of less general person, because they're my clients. They're the guys I want to work with. So I'm going to just sacrifice retention and go, do you know what? This is going to go over most people's heads, but the guys that watch it are going to be blown away because they're going to go, that's perfect. And that tends to be what happens. My best, like, most informative stuff doesn't do very well compared to the stuff that's easy to digest.
Yeah. And do you find a video like that that may not perform as well, does that have any impact on the performance of your next more general video?
So it all goes back to impressions again. So what you tend to find is when you go through like big growth, and you can see it in your data, you can see this blue line, which is new audience, and then your purple line, which is return viewers. If I get a big spike in new viewers, I can get more impressions on release of my next video with a lower click-through rate. Okay. Now, it's almost like YouTube saying, yes, we've got a bigger pool of people to test your stuff with. So when I was growing at 2,000 subscribers a day, I put out a video now that just would have died. It had a rubbish click-through rate, but YouTube gave it was like my best performing video at that time. It just flew. In fact, all of them did whilst I was growing really quick. And then as the new audience slowed down, it was almost like the unique pool of people got smaller and smaller, less people returned to the content. And then it felt like, oh man, I get the best retention and best click-through rates I've ever had, and maybe YouTube's not pushing me quite as much. So that's what I've found, but I don't know if that's necessarily true across the board. And I'm kind of always a bit careful because I know that, the big entertainment channels out there can have breakouts all the time. So a breakout meaning if you go and look at a YouTube channel who's got, let's say they've got 100,000 subscribers and their average video does between 10,000 and 50,000 views. And you go and look at their channel and you're like, okay, every video is in between those view numbers. They could potentially have not had one new viewer discover that. It could all just be community coming back because they haven't hit the data for YouTube to push them to a cold audience, like a breakout. But then you might scroll down and go, oh, cool, here's one that did amazing. And you can kind of see when these videos get pushed and break out, but sometimes I don't see the videos that released after that do any better than the other ones that are sort of within the boundaries of what they usually get on a video. Okay. So I don't necessarily know the answer to that question, but from my own data, it does feel like if your audience is hot, as in active, and you build it up and it gets big, you do seem to get more impressions the next video.
Yeah. Okay, that makes total sense. And obviously, the more effective you are with storytelling, it's going to encourage people to come back because people do love an interesting story, like you said. And you went the route of just getting the reps in and getting better through every time you did it. But for somebody listening to this, is there any sort of tools that you could recommend from like books, courses, etc., that helped you develop that storytelling muscle?
The thing that was the best for me is I make videos. In my research, it's like, oh, videos about creators always do better. Like, it's not about me, it's about this amazing creator. So I just started talking about that creator. I'd make a video about them, and then I'd copy their style in the video. So when you're making a video about Mr. Beast, and you're teaching people how to edit like him, but you're making a video in his style, you have to then learn his style, which pushes you a ton. So at the moment, I'm doing one where I'm talking about a famous YouTuber who's got an crazy editing style, and I'm having to make my video like his. So it's pushing me to a new level that I would never have hit before. And that's what made me better, is just trying to copy the style of a big YouTuber, analyzing what they're doing, and then trying to make my own video that style, talking about them. So any YouTuber could do it. You could watch, trying to think of a person, like Matt Devella, and you could say, okay, I'm gonna make my next video like his. And you just look at his intro, how he edits, the pacing, how he makes shots. And you just try and copy his style. And by the end of it, it's gonna be a hell of a lot of work, and you'll probably be frustrated at how long it takes. But your next video, you're so much better. And that's been the best thing for me, I think, is just copying, trying to learn how they do things. And then you always leave with a little bit of them.
Yeah.
So like I'm not going to edit all my videos like Mr. Beast, but there's a few little tricks that I picked up where I think, yeah, cool, I'm going to use that as a little like engagement hack in my next video. So you sort of develop your own style around that and storytelling. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's the best thing to do.
That's such a cool approach because, yeah, you're basically building your toolkit with every challenge that you take on, and you take what pertains to you and that you like, and then you don't, the things you don't, and then essentially you're building your own voice through the voices of other people's success, which is really, really cool. So
that's it. Yeah.
You mentioned you've mentioned this word so many times, and I love it because it's so slept on, and that's the importance of community and building the right community, because we've mentioned return viewers a bunch of times. So my channel really struggles with that. What are tips that someone like my situation can do to improve their community, and how many people are actually coming back to their content, not just finding them for the first time?
If I never grew my channel ever again, I would be in an amazing position, because I have 130,000 people who come back every month and watch a video. And that is a bigger community than most corporations have. And not only that, they like watching my stuff. I'm not some faceless business, right? So to me, that should be the ultimate goal for everyone, is you don't need millions. 100,000 is obscene. I still can't, my goal was 10,000 return viewers in a month. I still cannot believe that I fill up the biggest stadiums in the world every month with YouTube video content.
Same.
So if you want to do that, you have to make it all about the return viewer. So you still, we really want new viewers to come in, and we can't make our content too over familiar. But I always just think, like, I think about my avatars, as I call them, and it's like, how do I get them back? How do I make this interesting and fun for them? And I really value that they come back. So it goes back to this whole, well, it's boring. I start my process, like, I'm going to make a video about click-through rate. Oh, that's boring. It's been done a million times before. How do I make my return viewers watch that? So at the end of it, they go, I'll be back to the next video. That was so good. And how do I make them click on it? And really, it's just a case of pushing yourself and trying new things to start off with. But taking that approach that you need to do this for them and get better for them because you need them. And they like you, but we need them, right? So I would say you got to start testing stuff, as in try something outside of your comfort zone. And you've got to put the effort into the content. So click-through rate is a number that gets broken down into like return viewers first, right? So YouTube will tell you in your analytics sometimes that a video is doing better than normal because it got a higher click-through rate than normal with your return viewers. It doesn't shout about this, but it's in there. So you want to take notice of that and be like, why did my community come back to that? And then act on it. And then they're always going to have a higher click-through rate than your cold audience. And YouTube knows that as well. That's why you don't blow up every time you get amazing click-through rates, because you might not have amazing click-through rates with your cold audience, just your return audience. And I've actually seen channels, same click-through rates and retention, never break out because their thumbnails and titles are too familiar. So that's cool. You bring the community back, but then you need to have like the unspoken click-through rate. And that takes time. And that is where you put so much effort into your time and your content and you create an experience. People are going to click on it no matter what it is. And that's like fans, right? They become, I hate the word, but it's like fans. And that'll always boost your click-through rate and build your community because you've spent so much effort really catering to making this an experience they enjoy. And most people don't go that far. And that's what Mr. Beast has. He's going to get 10 million people come back no matter what he does because they trust everything he makes is going to be amazing. And he always ensures that it is. So that's the long-term thing. People are always like, oh, what can I do to fix my channel? And I'm like, well, work hard over a long period of time, try things, always try and improve, and dedicate a few years to this, and then you'll start to see the results. And it's why a lot of businesses don't do it. Yeah. So it's really valuing people and saying like, I owe this to them to make it as good as I can. And that will come back to me if I eventually keep that level up and stay consistent.
Yeah, it's that approach and mindset to every single thing, even if it's not working right away. It's the understanding and belief that it will work. And I believe a big reason why you can do this so successfully is mentioning the word you said a little while ago of avatar. And I actually just went through your avatar workshop, and I found it really, really helpful to develop a way to speak to a specific person. And it was strange how I had done similar things in the past or heard about them, but until you actually put the time to build this person and get to know them, it's difficult to speak to them. So can you first explain what an avatar is and why they're so important for YouTube success?
So an avatar is just a marketing term. It's like called personas. It's just, YouTube is marketing at the end of the day. Even if you don't want it to be, it's a marketing platform. You've got to get attention, and that's what marketing is. So an avatar is just like understanding the people you make your content for on as deep a level as you can. And one of the reasons I've always focused on this is because when I used to work in my production company, the amount of marketing companies we came across who did a bad job, and they always started with avatars. Let's get to know your audience. And then after that point, it was like, oh, what was the point in that? They just forgot about it and they moved on and they never referenced it again. And you'd look at what they'd put out and you'd be like, this is rubbish because your avatars aren't going to click on this or be motivated by it. You've just forgotten about them, but you've ticked this box like it was important and then never referenced them. So for me, it's like, okay, who are my avatars? And I've got a few, and then they're breaking down into age, their interests. So we've got the demographic, which is the physical attributes, so like where they are in the world, how old they are, their sex, and then the psychographic, which is their the sort of mental things about them, really, like what are their goals in life, what are their fears, what are their motivators, and I really focus on trying to understand those. Now, what's cool is, apart from one of my avatars, it's me at one stage in my life, so it makes it a lot easier to go, I remember the feeling of waking up in the morning and of putting tons of effort into a video and it having no views. So I can harness that pain and I write it down and I'm like, you know, and then you start to work out these fears and these motivators and these goals, and then you bring that into your content, and it's like empathetic in a way. But it's always my first question. Everything I do is based around those people that I'm picturing. Because if you don't do that, you lose track. You end up making stuff for yourself. You end up making stuff that you think's fun. Even a simple thing as like using a music track. I'm really aware that I'm out of touch with 18-year-olds, but there's a lot that watch my content. So I just sprinkle songs in to the videos that are like chart music that they will recognize, because they'll feel something. They'll be like, oh, I love this song. It's cool. Oh, this guy's using the latest TikTok track, you know, and they can resonate with me in a way that I can't really do it with an 18-year-old anymore because I'm 36.
Yeah.
So everything I do is about those people, trying to understand them best, and then positioning every element of what I do at them. And it's hard, and you only really learn how to do it by trying, and then you're looking at your data and your thumbnails and your titles and your click-through rates and your impression to then try and determine if you got it right or not. But that's what YouTube's about, really. It's just trying to understand people and then serve them up something they're interested in on a repetitive basis.
It's really powerful how quickly someone can really connect with you when you are relatable. And I think doing through something like your avatar workshop or going through those exercises to figure out who that person is gives you the opportunity to be relatable, and then that allows you to connect with people really, really quickly. And it's so much easier when you know who that person is, or at least have a loose idea. So I appreciate you for diving into that. A lot of people watching this are probably going to be new to the YouTube game or not all that successful, whatever that means. So what would your tips be for new YouTubers?
If in your head you can't think of yourself still doing this in 10 years' time, I don't know if I'd bother. That's the first thing, right? You've got to really be in this for the long term, and you do have to love making content. One of the things people always say is, what's my niche? And I'm like, well, you've got to talk about the thing you're interested in, because if you're talking about something you don't care about for 10 years, that's a problem. So it's like, the first thing is people say like, you know, how do I find my niche? We don't. You find the people that you want to talk to and then find out how to communicate them in an interesting way. But make sure you're talking about something you flipping love, because if you don't, this is going to be painful. And then I'd say just watch a lot of YouTube. It's crazy how many like big YouTube channels I talk to, and I'm like, yeah, who are you watching? And they're like, no, I don't watch YouTube. And I'm like, how on earth are you spotting the patterns that you need to understand humans to get this working? So that's another thing about avatars. It's like you try and spot patterns of what humans click on YouTube. So you have to spend a lot of time watching YouTube for study, which kind of sucks the fun out of it. Like, I don't enjoy YouTube as a platform. I just cannot watch YouTube videos anymore because I end up studying them. But it helps me understand people in a much better way. And then I'd say, once you've just been studying YouTubers, is pick a style, like I said earlier, of someone that you love. You think, this is an amazing YouTuber. And by amazing YouTuber, this is a YouTuber who gets a lot of views on release. So look, there's many different ways to grow a YouTube channel and a community, but for me, it's all about, if you find a YouTuber with 100,000 subscribers who gets 100,000 views on every video, that's the sort of person you want to be learning from. So look at how they make things and then try and do a little bit of what they do each time sprinkled into your content. And that way you've got someone to learn from. You don't have to, you know, one of the problems that, another thing is, everyone's always looking at too much information about YouTube. I don't think I've watched any YouTube advice content since March last year. Oh no, it might have been May, which was on Daryl's course. Otherwise, I don't watch it because I just want to focus on these really inspirational creators and becoming as good to them as possible and just sticking to one strategy rather than trying all these different things, because it's your content and your click-through rates, nothing else holding you back, and you learn by trying to follow in the footsteps of the best people. And then just sort of take baby steps. So if that creator that you're trying to learn from has got like insane production, don't go out and buy the best camera and try and do that, because you won't ever make it look like them until you've got the skills. But if they're shooting loads of footage over the top of what they're talking about, it's going to take you time to understand how to do that. So just film an intro and take a little bit of what they do and the way they film, put it into your intro, and then just keep the rest of the video at a pace you can handle. And then next time be like, I'm gonna do the intro again, but I'm gonna push the edit a little bit more. Maybe I'll put some subtitles in here or there, or try and do something funky with text, and just build brick by brick until you get to the point where you're like, I'm as good as these guys now. How do I get better? And then you've got to find someone else.
That's awesome.
I think that's probably what I'd do if I started again.
That's wicked. So if you're just starting out, rewatch that and then go do it. So for a lot of people, I get asked all the time about how to make better titles and thumbnails. I think you do a really good job of this. So when you get asked that question, what's your answer to people?
Depends how bad the thumbnail and title situation is.
Okay.
First thing is just go and research YouTube and learn from creators who have got success, because the title is always going to be short, pretty much, and we don't want to be stuffing tons of keywords in. YouTube, it knows what your video is about. It analyzes every word you say. It reads every word in the thumbnail. Like it knows that I'm holding up a mug if I'm holding it up in B-roll. It's way beyond keyword stuffing now. So think on a human level. How is this interesting to people? And then for thumbnails, it's all about intrigue. So look, the guys I work with are mainly educators. And there are slightly different rules, I believe, for that sort of content. But a thumbnail's kind of easier if you go and do a challenge. So if you're like, I drank 10,000 cups of coffee. Well, you think of the story and the result, and you want to create some drama, so you would have to have like coffee all around you, passed out on the floor, coffee dribbling out of your mouth. If it's a video that's educational, that isn't a challenge of that nature, then you've got to think, well, how do I create intrigue with this image? So it needs to be instantly recognizable to your avatars as something they might care about the second it pops up. It needs to have context so people understand it. And it basically needs to make them go, I wonder what that's about. It looks like it's relevant to me. What am I missing out on? And then they need to read the title and go, okay, cool, that's filled in some gaps, but I'm still kind of intrigued as to what this might be about. And they come in. But there's no real set, this is what you do with your thumbnails and titles. And it's changed a lot. I think a lot of people feel like they have to be in their thumbnails because that was the advice. Have a crazy face. And I've found that not being in them gets me more click-through rate, a high click-through rate, more impressions. So, you kind of have to test these things over time. And that's the frustrating thing for people, is that YouTube is testing stuff, taking the information that people tell you and trying it, not going by it as gospel, but also accepting that if you don't pull it off the first time, don't blame them. It's probably still you. It's probably still not quite a good enough thumbnail. So it's practice. But I wish it was black and white and I could just say, use the color red and this word and you'll get more clicks. But it's never quite as simple. Actually, saying that, orange at the moment is getting more clicks.
There you go.
But that won't last forever.
Yeah, exactly. I think what makes YouTube so amazing is also makes it so frustrating. And it's something that you've repeated a few times throughout this, is how nuanced everything is and how specific it is, and it's always changing. So you need to become obsessed with constantly adapting and learning and not getting too tied to anything, because tomorrow it could stop working if people's behaviors change. So I think just adopting that constant evolution and state of analysis is obviously, like you said, it detracts how much you can enjoy content, but it makes you a way better YouTuber.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things. Like Matt Devella is very keen on just make what you're interested in. And I totally agree. But I every week talk to creators who started off like that, just like I did. Oh, this is fun. And then suddenly got bitten by the YouTube bug. And we're like, no one's watching my stuff. And when you make something and you think you're an expert and you're credible and no one watches it, that hits you. And it's not a good feeling. And it's like, hang on, this is telling me that I'm not credible. No one's watching my stuff. I deserve views because I'm smart and my clients are paying me. Why can't YouTube push me? And then you go down this hole and some people quit because it's too much. the others push themselves to this like terrifying level of obsession and keep at it for a long time. And the enjoyment comes back for sure. But I think everyone goes through a feeling of, I hate this at some point. But it's like, you know, you just got to keep going and otherwise you can't really live your dream as a YouTuber. But yeah, it's a weird thing to do it if I think back at how much stress it's put me through. But I do love it.
Yeah, and that comes through in your videos, and it's obviously paid off tremendously. So I hope that, as a viewer, I hope you don't stop. Unless it brings you too much, then take a break or something. But
no, I'm not going to stop. I'm only pushing it further. I've got some plans.
It's music to my ears. I love that. But what's next for you on the plan? 'Cause I know you're a long distance thinker and you're constantly innovating in this space. So like, what's the plan as of right now for you?
Building an app, which I can't talk too much about, for YouTubers to help. Yeah, I'll just say that.
Okay.
That I'm hoping to talk about release it soon.
Okay, and so where would people get updates on that? On your YouTube channel, or where's the best place?
They'll just know.
They'll know.
When the video comes out, they'll know.
Amazing.
Like, as long as it's as cool a thing as I think I've made, they'll find out somehow. Someone will show it to them, hopefully. It might just be like, that's rubbish, Ed, and they won't find out. But if that is the case, they didn't need to find out anyway. But I think it's pretty fun and pretty cool.
Love that. Well, I'm excited for that.
My heart is really in helping creative people just sort of make money or like grow in terms of build something. Because I think when I was at school, I was one of the only kids in my year that didn't go to uni. And it was like, I had to lie to my school and tell them that I was going to uni so they would stop calling my parents to try and convince them to send me to uni. Because all I wanted to do was art. That's what I loved, making art. And it was very much, if you're creative, you're poor, you're going to be unsuccessful, and everyone else is going to be richer than you. And for me, I think that's my mission, is just to help creative people really just prove those people wrong. My whole life is devoted to proving some certain people wrong. So I would like to move more towards the creator economy and helping on the sort of marketing and business development side of it too. Because there's a lot of YouTubers out there who have amazing communities and they've just not really had the confidence to monetize them yet. And some of them are actually struggling to get by. And with, with a few tweaks and the right offering, they'd be very successful. So I'd like to shift that way. It's very niche. I do have another channel where I look after creatives. But that's also super, super niche. So that's maybe the next thing, as well as just building a team. I like working with younger people. Yeah. So Tyler, it's been quite fun. He's working with me to try and boost his confidence, get him, his content, just let him know that like he's good, like push themselves. Because when you're young, you get looked down on. Like my first business, I was 18. They never listened to a word I said. But in YouTube, the youngest people I talk to about YouTube, there's one guy I'm talking to, he's really young and like, he just gets YouTube. He makes viral TikTok videos for fun. He's just like, I don't really care. I just see how many videos I can blow up. And it's incredible, but they get it more than anyone else. So I quite like helping them, with their sort of business or helping them sort of push on to the next level where they can do something with their lives. So that's my current plan.
Hey, I like
it. Changes every few weeks.
Yeah, as it does in this kind of industry. But I love that, and I hope that everything comes to be as you see it coming. And so a lot of people watching this are probably in a similar situation to what you were in when you were going through deciding not to go to uni and more pursuing a creative path. And while stigma has maybe changed slightly, there still is a lot of, like a starving artist kind of thing. So for someone who's in that situation, what really helped you to know that was the right decision for you, and how did you turn it into a success?
It was never a doubt that it wasn't the right decision, because all I've ever wanted to do was make videos, make music, make videos, make art. Like, doing anything else would have been an awful decision for me. And it was. My first company wasn't creative and I hated it. So it depends on your mindset. So I'm very driven and like competitive and I'm very focused on working hard. If that's not you, is tough, because there's no doubt that any creative industry is a slog. And actually you kind of have to go through some tough times to come out on top, you know, and keep pushing yourself to learn and adapt. And creatives don't want to learn about business or accounting. We're often really bad at customer service. So you have to do all these things that you hate. So really, you got to set a goal for yourself and be like, what do I want from life? And how much am I willing to sacrifice and push myself to get there? And if the answer's not much, that's absolutely fine. Just stick to the thing that you want to do. You know, if you want to just do like graphic design and you're not bothered about building a business or a massive following, that's amazing. If that makes you happy, and that's your goal. But if you have got grander visions, then you've got to be realistic and accept that 10 years is the sort of time frame that you need to be aiming for to get anywhere. And just trust that if you have got the drive and you're always willing to learn and you're always willing to push yourself and you are willing to do 15-hour days sometimes, that you'll get there. And I never really had any, like, I remember thinking like, nothing's gonna stop me growing this YouTube channel. I'm gonna do it. If it takes me 10 years, it took me 10 years, but that is happening. And if you have that sort of mindset, well, you'll probably get anywhere, but you kind of have to be pretty stuck in your ways and stubborn to get there.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's awesome. And you can tell that you are that way, and I'm glad that you are. So, Ed, I want to thank you once again for your time here, because you've made me a better YouTuber and a better creative from this conversation, and I know that everyone listening has as well. So where can people find you to work with you and to watch your content? How can they get more Ed in their life?
So the YouTube channel is just called Film Booth.
Yep.
And then the website's just film-booth, because someone took Film Booth. I didn't want to pay extra for it. So it's film-booth.com. And then there should be links on there, I think. I'm changing a lot of things at the moment. But otherwise, there's links to like workshops and like coaching and stuff just Amazing. On the About Me link on the YouTube channel. Okay, awesome. All of that will be linked down below. Those are the major questions that I had on you. I'm sure after this goes live, people will want you to come back on, and I hope you will in the future. But I just want to thank you so much, Ed, for your time. I look forward to your future content, man. Thank you so much. Sure, no problem. Glad to be on.